Hey everybody, it's Tom Woods. I wanted to say a few things about what's been going on in the news these days regarding state nullification of unconstitutional federal laws, which to my amazement seems to be picking up steam. We've been reading in particular about what's been going on in Idaho, where there's a nullification bill there directed at the national health care law. We've also seen this in a number of other states, and it's being contemplated in still others. And it's been especially gratifying for me because I've heard either through the grapevine or directly that my own book on this subject, Nullification, seems to have had some kind of role in perhaps influencing some legislators or the general public. I gave a lecture at Boise State University in late 2010. I don't think there was an empty seat in that whole auditorium. It was unbelievable. Very well received, because it is just common sense, really. And in fact, the governor of Idaho, it's been reported in the press, has read the book, which I knew, but I hadn't made that public because I figured I'd spare the poor guy some grief. But all the same, this is quite interesting and gratifying, and I'm keeping up on top of it and very interested in it. Now, what I want to do here is not so much defend nullification, which I've done in the book, and which I've done on my website, tomwoods.com, with some of the articles you can find there, but also at statenullification.com. Statenullification.com is where you can get a basic primer, a quick overview of these ideas, along with links for further reading and some videos to watch as well. I want to talk about a few other things, and the first one is, you talk about nullification, you're going to be smeared. That is absolutely unavoidable. This is not for the faint of heart. You are going to be smeared. Why are you going to be smeared? Because in American political life, you are allowed to hold opinions that range from Mitch McConnell to Hillary Clinton. So that sort of 3-inch area is where you are allowed to be. Now, obviously, nullification does not lie along that spectrum, so naturally anybody who endorses that or any other idea that's not somewhere between Mitch and Hillary is probably there's something wrong with this person. Person may need psychological evaluation, probably kind of crazy. Well, what's been happening to me is that it seems like the idea is that if they can hurt me, then people who are opponents of this idea can discredit the idea in general. But this is, after all, Thomas Jefferson's idea, and so regardless of what they do to me, I'm inclined to think it'll stand on its merits. But what's been happening lately is that now the press and some of these left-wing media monitor groups, where it's their job to scour America for unapproved opinions and then appropriately scold people for not staying on that Mitch to Hillary continuum. And what they've been doing is trying to dig up things from college 17 years ago to try to hurt me with, that they will then portray in the most exaggerated and uncharitable manner. And it's come out, for example, that some years ago, wait for it, I spoke at a Southern Heritage meeting. Oh my goodness gracious. Well, that's pretty much all you need to hear, isn't it? Obviously, I must support slavery. What other explanation could there be? Well, look, I'm not a Southerner myself. I was born and raised in Massachusetts. When I was 21, I moved to New York, which is where I got my PhD. And right now, my family and I live in Kansas. So my whole Southern thing is just that I happen to think it's a teensy bit unfair that decades after the Civil Rights Movement, the South is still treated like some kind of national punching bag. Like everybody can make fun of them, everybody can make disparaging remarks about them, people can form their opinions based on stereotypes, and nobody cares. If you were to do these things about any other group, we'd never hear the end of it. The candlelight vigils, the hunger strikes, and so on and on. But this is just one of these groups that is not officially protected, and you can say whatever you want to, and that just seems kind of not right to me, particularly given that over the past quarter century, blacks have been moving to the South. Look at the demographics. They've been moving to the South, not away from it. It is not Birmingham 1963 any longer, and it's not fair to keep doing this to decent people. Moreover, the South did give us Thomas Jefferson, Patrick Henry, George Washington, James Madison, George Mason, not to mention Mark Twain, Edgar Allan Poe, Walker Percy, and William Faulkner. So I do think it's possible to be opposed to the South as punching bag routine without, at the same time, endorsing slavery. I don't actually know the IQ scores of people who think that you would be endorsing slavery to take that position, but apparently in this country we are blessed with many such people. One of these sites is calling me a right-wing pseudo-historian. Now, I realize, your opponents are going to call you crazy names, nothing you can do about it, but just to make it marginally more difficult for them to do this to me, and by extension to the cause I'm championing. Let me just point out for the record, and by the way, all of you who know me, you all know I don't play the credential game. I'm not some ego case who's fixated on his accomplishments. But once in a while, you do need to do something like this. And the fact is, I did graduate with high honors from Harvard. I hold a master's, an MPhil, and a PhD from Columbia University. My books have been published by top houses like Columbia University Press, Random House, and Basic Books. I've won a $50,000 book prize. I've been reviewed favorably in the Journal of American History, the American Historical Review, the Journal of American Studies, and many other professional journals. And my books have been published in 12 languages. Well, you know, not too bad for a pseudo-historian, I'd say. The internet is the great equalizer because you can read my actual words and watch my actual speeches for yourself at tomwoods.com. Now, to Idaho legislators, if you guys wind up getting a little grief on my account, I am genuinely sorry about this, but anytime you take on both wings of the establishment, you can expect this kind of treatment. If you've read the book, you know that the case for nullification is extremely compelling, historically, constitutionally, and morally. Most people have never actually heard the evidence, most of which has fallen down the Orwellian memory hole. It's been funny for me to hear all these law school graduates going after the idea when they do not know the first thing about any of this stuff. They think the Supremacy Clause refutes it. So I talk all about that in the book. And so regardless of what's going on with me, the idea stands on its merit. So I hope you're not going to be cowed, but that you will press on even more vigorously than before. If you don't, we all know what's going to happen. Absolutely nothing will change. Nothing is going to change until somebody takes a stand and says no more. And you too are going to be called names, and to add insult to injury, you're going to be called names by people who know exactly zero about the subject matter. So, for example, you will probably be accused of secretly wanting to bring back slavery. Now, I assume most of our fellow Americans have an IQ above 60 and probably wouldn't fall for something as idiotic as that. But what's particularly interesting to note is that nullification, not only was it never used to defend slavery, where are they even getting this? But it was used, in fact, to fight against slavery. Take, for example, Wisconsin, which in the 1850s declared the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, notwithstanding the Constitution's Fugitive Slave Clause, they declared it to be unconstitutional. They did not believe that that clause thereby authorized all the various odious provisions of the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850. They said this is unconstitutional and therefore void, and they quoted Thomas Jefferson and his Kentucky resolutions of 1798 and the follow-up resolutions of that next year on nullification. Very interesting. When South Carolina seceded December 20th, 1860, in its document proclaiming its secession, what was one of its grievances? That the North was nullifying too much. Well, you don't hear that at Huffington Post too much. None of these people know any of that stuff, with the honorable exception of the great Jeff Taylor, a guy on the left who's actually honest and knows some history. Now, having said this, if you want to get a sense of how the media is going to treat nullification, I urge you to go to interviewwithazombie.com and look at the video I made when this book came out. I predicted exactly what would happen. We've already had over 75,000 views. Spread this video around, because when you watch it, you will see this will resonate with a lot of ordinary Americans who are tired of being intimidated by the commissars of approved opinion. No more. So yes, you're going to be called names. All right. But other great patriots had to endure far worse. You have to commit yourself to this principle, that I don't care what Rachel Maddow says about me, I don't care what Plastic Man Mitt Romney says about me, and I certainly don't care what these totalitarian thought controllers say about me. You are standing up for a great and indispensable mechanism of liberty that every tyrant who ever lived has opposed. Hitler was a huge opponent of states' rights, naturally. Why wouldn't he be? In European history, liberty came to Western civilization not because Europe was one giant blob, or because they had large centralized states, but precisely because political power was so decentralized into tiny areas across the expanse of the continent. You guys are striking at the bizarre and dehumanizing assumption that one city handing down infallible commands to 309 million people is the only way society can be organized. Don't back down. If anything, get even tougher. All right, thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you all next time.